On April 1st of 2020, I released my first book, When Magic Calls, a collection of modern fairy tales. And I was so excited. I had all sorts of events planned. I was going to have 2 book release parties, one in my current town and one in my hometown. I had presentations and signings lined up at lots of local bookstores, and I was going to speak with my book at 2 writers' conferences. I was ready to go with my in-person marketing. Then the pandemic happened. All of that was postponed and eventually canceled, and I was so disappointed. Not only did I not get my book release parties and all of those things that I was excited about, but April is also my birth month, and I had thought of my book release as a birthday present to myself and my book release party as my birthday party. So it was kind of like having 2 important life events canceled all at once. I know that everyone else in the world was going through their own things, but this was my pandemic experience. And I could have done what many traditional publishers did, paused everything, said, I'm not doing another thing until this rolls over, or I find out what's going on. But I'm not really the most patient person, and I'd already released my book, so my new release status was counting down. I had to do something. Instead of pausing, I decided to switch gears and figure out what I could do. So today I want to share things I learned publishing my first book during a pandemic. Some of these lessons I'm going to share with you, I knew better. I'd heard them before, but I guess I hadn't internalized them in the way I thought I had. And some of these were things that I couldn't have anticipated, like a full-on pandemic. If you are not quite ready to publish, even if you are, hang on until the end of this video and I'll let you know how you can get a free timeline of a book. That's going to let you know when you should be doing some of these things that I'm going to talk about in your writing and publishing journey. This is Ignited Ink Writing, a channel dedicated to helping authors like you transform your writing so it lingers with your readers, because writing that lingers gets remembered and recommended to others. I'm Caitlin Burvey, editor and author. I want to start with mix up your marketing because not everything works. One thing that I knew better than to do was to rely on so much in-person marketing. It's just not as effective today, and I know that, but it's more fun. I was excited for those parties. I'm a big networker as an author, and so I was excited to get all of these different people in my life together and to celebrate my book. So I slacked off on scheduling some of my online marketing. Don't do that. Don't be me. Even though the online stuff might seem like it doesn't need to be scheduled out in the same way, it definitely does. It's way more effective if you have your online scheduled just like you have your in-person marketing scheduled. And have a better mix than I did. Have a plan, know what you're going to do for each type of marketing. The second thing, though, that comes with mix it up, don't be afraid to try things on occasion. Maybe watch how much you are investing in some of these trial marketing strategies. But one thing I did that I don't really regret is I put an ad in Enchanted Living magazine. Normally I would never recommend a print ad, and I still don't. But Enchanted Living readers are my ideal readers. These are people who love fairy tales, fantasy, cosplay, all of that sort of magical thing, both in their reading and in real life. And I knew they were readers because the magazine has short stories and poems, and it features authors on occasion. What I did not do is I didn't make all of my money back because I paid for a package. I didn't just have the print ad, I also had some online advertising with that. What I learned that's valuable is the print ad did nothing. Didn't work at all. When the magazine came out, I didn't see any sales. But what did work was Enchanted Living mentioned me in their newsletter. I paid for that. It was a little bit of an interview style mention. That absolutely led directly to sales. On the day that that email newsletter went out, I made 30 sales on my website and saw a spike in my Amazon sales. That tells me that newsletter was absolutely effective. So I tried something out. I didn't quite make all of that money back, but I would pay to do just the newsletter portion of that package again. I wouldn't pay for any of the other stuff. And if I had done that, I would have made that money back and then some. So it's okay to try some things on occasion. You might find something that'll work uniquely for you and your book. So mix up your marketing. The second thing I learned is there are lots of ways to market a book online. There are all sorts of different ways to market a book online. Some are paid, some are free. The free ones cost you time. The paid ones cost you money, but they might save you time. I recommend mixing these up and looking for what's a good fit for you and your book and where your audience is. One thing that works for me is Amazon ads. Part of that is they're the least expensive of the ads that I've tried, so it doesn't take much for me to make that money back. So Amazon ads work. That newsletter worked for me. Now, newsletters in general might not work for you. You have to find the right newsletter, ones that have active readers who are paying attention, who are opening and clicking on the links in those emails. You also want to make sure that it's your ideal audience. It's not just any reader. It's a reader for your specific genre. Social media, of course, is a great place to advertise your book. One thing that I did not expect was the number of people who I haven't spoken to in 15 years from high school who said, "Hey, congratulations on your book. I just bought it," when I posted that I published my first book. I didn't think that that was going to happen. I didn't really plan on marketing to those people. I just announced my book's release. So that was a pleasant surprise. Don't discount the effect social media can have on your sales, even if it's something simple like that. Book reviews and podcast interviews are another way that you can market your book that tend to work a little bit better than some of the other guest blogging and things like that you can do. This is because you want to look for places where readers are going to look for books. So if I guest blog as an editor on a writing site, that's great for my editing business, but those are not readers that are reading that blog. Those are other writers. They might not be interested in my genre. They might not be interested in short stories. So that might not be the best fit if I'm trying to market my book. I want to look for places where readers are going to find books to read. That also includes YouTube channels about books. So see, these are lots of different ways that you can market online. I can, of course, pay for ads other than Amazon. I've done a little bit of that, but not as much. So there are lots of different places that you can market your book online. What I learned is I need to set these things up a month before I publish. That way I have them figured out and ready to go while my book is still under the new release status. Because that new release status is going to go a long way in helping your book rank and stay ranked for the lifetime of that book. So have a plan for your online marketing before you publish. Don't wait like I did. The third thing I learned is people do still like to read. There are way more readers out there than authors and publishers realize. This is something the pandemic showed us. People don't have time to read, but when the pandemic happened, they suddenly did. And we saw a huge spike in book sales across the board and in reading rates. So these are things like books getting checked out of libraries, pages read in KDP. Those numbers were up. That's because people suddenly had more time to read. And I'm hoping that they have fallen back in love with reading and are going to make it more of a priority in their life. There are lots of readers out there. The book industry is not going anywhere. What I also learned about this is traditional publishers are slow moving. What they did during the pandemic is they halted everything. They didn't produce any books. This has two long-term side effects. One, their backlog has been pushed back even farther. So if you want to land a traditional publishing contract from a big company, know that it's likely not going to be released for 2 years after it's been accepted now, because they paused their book production for so long that they are backed up. Now, this should eventually work itself out, but for right now, it's going to be a while. Second, because they halted all book releases and production, some book printers went out of business. A good number of book printers went out of business. That means the price of books is about to go up because there is more demand than there is supply. Yes, we still have the paper and stuff, but we don't have the machines and the companies to make them. So be prepared for books to maybe start costing a little bit more. If I had the money, I might invest in a book printer right now, because something that I would love to do is to start a book printing operation for local authors, for indie authors that's a little bit more of a hybrid between what a traditional publisher gets and an on-demand service. But I don't have those funds, so I can't do that. The fourth thing I learned is getting noticed is hard, but quality help is worth the price. I knew getting noticed was hard. I'd started my own business. I'd already done that process. I also knew going in that I was eventually going to want help with my book marketing. It took me a long time to pay for that help for two reasons. One, it was a pandemic. I didn't have the extra money to do that right away. But more importantly, too, I have heard so many horror stories about people hiring book marketers that didn't do much for them, that never paid for themselves, that ended up being scammed. I've heard way more stories like that than I have successful ones. So I was afraid, and I wasn't willing to make that leap until I found someone that I trusted. I ended up going with someone who I met for the Colorado Independent Publishers Association. I'd been around this person for a while, so I believed that they could truly help me. The other thing that I was looking for in a book marketer is I did not want someone who is going to do everything for me because, one, they cost way more, and two, I don't trust that. I want to be more involved in the process. So I was looking for someone who would do some things for me and teach me how to do other things, which is what I found in Mary. She did things like redid my Amazon categories for me. I thought I'd done an okay job, but I did not, because as soon as she did that, my rankings immediately went up. What she taught me how to do was how to find podcasts, YouTube channels, book reviewers, people like that for my book. Not just how to find them, but how to do it quickly, how to quickly tell if someone is the right fit for me or not. It was saving me time. It was less overwhelming because she sent me to places that were already curating these things, so I wasn't just Googling them. She also helped me work out how to pitch these places to give me the best shot at getting accepted. That has already worked out for me. And we created a great relationship, so I definitely plan on using her for my next book launch. I want to work with Mary on a launch plan before I even start that marketing, to know where the best places for my book are. Book marketing is constantly changing, so what was the thing to do a year ago is old hat and not working anymore. I need someone who I can go to who's keeping up with those things and can help me do the same. So if you are thinking about self-publishing, I highly recommend starting to look for someone who you trust to help you with your marketing. It was definitely worth the money, and it just took me a little while to become comfortable making that leap. The fifth thing I learned was audiobook production takes a long time. You might have noticed that oftentimes the print and ebook version of a book is released a while before the audiobook is released. There's a reason for that. Audiobook production takes a while. I did mine myself, and it took me about a month. Now, granted, there was a learning curve in there, but it also just takes time to narrate and edit and master and get all of that stuff uploaded and ready to go. So if you are planning on releasing an audiobook, understand that it is not going to be immediate. If you're going to pay someone to narrate and master for you, you're going to have to wait until you fit into their schedule. If you plan on doing this yourself, it's still going to take a while. Even though you can get started immediately, there's a learning curve, and it just takes hours to narrate. You can't get around that. So audiobook production is going to take longer than you might think. I would absolutely release an audiobook again. I just might wait to release my ebook and print so that I can release all three formats at the same time, or I might have a launch plan for the audiobook itself and plan on doing a marketing program just for that part. The last thing I learned was to be prepared for creative burnout. If you're like me, you spend some of your creativity on your marketing. It takes creative energy to come up with social media posts, to come up with advertisements, to write marketing copy, to pitch places, to be interviewed. All of these things take energy, time, and some of your creative mind space. That means that getting started on your next book might not be so easy when you're in the middle of all this book marketing launch stuff. I got really burned out after this. And at the same time, I was mourning normal life because the pandemic had just started. This meant that I was definitely experiencing creative burnout, and I couldn't write for a while after I published that book. This is normal. Most authors that I talk to do experience a little bit of a dry spell after their first book publication because they push so hard to get to that publication date, and then they finally do, and they mark it, and they're just tired. They just need some time to recover. That's normal. But if I knew that that was going to happen, I would have been better prepared for it, and I would have given myself a deadline of when I needed to start writing. I would have allowed myself to say, hey, you don't have to expend any creative energy for this time period. You're just going to take a break, but by this time, we're going to try jumping back in again. Because I wasn't prepared for that, I probably tried to push longer than I should have, which meant that my burnout lasted longer than it needed to. So be prepared for a creative burnout after you publish your book. I want to leave you with an author and editor's thoughts on publishing during a pandemic. 1 year goes by so fast. I can't believe my book, When Magic Calls, has already been out for a whole year. I'm a little bit disappointed in myself because I was hoping to have another book ready to release at this point, but the pandemic happened and my creative burnout happened and unforeseen circumstances. I'm not quite there yet, but I am working on it. So give yourself some leeway for unexpected things to come up after your first book's publication. Also, I would absolutely release my book again during the pandemic. I would just have a better game plan. Now I know that I need a mix of online and in-person marketing because I never know when one whole marketing avenue is going to be completely canceled. Also, if I had known that the traditional publishers were all going to freak out and pause their publication completely, I would have been better prepared to take advantage of that as an indie author. One thing about being someone who is published by a small press or who is self-publishing, we can pivot really easily. We can change up our plans quickly because it's just us. We're not this big publishing franchise that's going to be slow moving and slow evolving. We can maneuver fairly quickly. So I would have done that. I would have flipped some things over. I would have just been better ready to take advantage of some of those opportunities. I'm also better prepared for my next book publication because I know what type of launch plan I really need. I have a book marketer in my back pocket who I'm ready to work with again, and I have these lessons that I've learned. Hopefully, they help you have a more successful first book launch than I did. Even though I still count mine as successful, I want yours to be better. So what are some tips you have for publishing your first book or your next book? Share them in the comments below. And for more videos on book marketing and other aspects of writing, subscribe to Ignited Ink Writing, a channel dedicated to helping authors like you transform your writing so it lingers with your readers. Because writing that lingers gets remembered and recommended to others. I'm Caitlin Burphy, editor and author. To find out more about me, go to www.ignitedinkwriting.com. That's where you will find your free timeline of a book, which will help you figure out when you should be working on your launch plan, when you should be doing some other marketing things, and when you should just focus on your writing. It's also linked in the description below. And go to caitlinburvey.com to check out my book, When Magic Calls, a collection of modern fairy tales, and other writings and merchandise are there. Now it's your turn to take the lessons that I learned and my experience and apply them to your own publishing journey so you can avoid some of the same mistakes and ignite your ink.